Alrighty, Aidan. So first of all, great to meet you today, but also great to work with you. Like I kind of talked about beforehand, I'm going to compare your mechanics to a major leaguer's, and who better than to compare to one of arguably the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in baseball when he's healthy, of Jacob DeGrom. So I'm going to compare both of y'all's mechanics side by side, and from there, we're just kind of going to go into it and take a look at just a few things. Number one, we worked on, but also number two, what we're going to keep working on going forward. So, the big two things that we worked on today. First things first, we worked on these two components, right? We talked about just going straight up like this. If I were to clear these, going straight up with this and straight up with that, and creating a chain, right? The same thing that kind of we see with DeGrom here, right? If I were to clear both of these, two very, very similar stances right here, right? Obviously, we're going to get into the differences here in just a second of what's the difference between DeGrom and yourself. So, first things first, right? Whenever we get into this position, we're going to go from here and keep going. So, notice one thing about DeGrom right here, right? I'm going to take a look at your hip and take a look at his hip, right? When we talk about potential energy, right, and how we build up all this potential energy into kinetic energy, DeGrom does a fantastic job of this, right? So notice whenever he brings up his leg, he's getting into this hip right here, right? Which, as you notice, is making him automatically go forward, right? Now, if we take a look at yours, we're kind of in this stagnant position right here, right? And this is what we talked about, that you're in a very stagnant position. Now, that is very common for a lot of pitchers that just start off. So don't feel like you're doing anything wrong right now. Obviously, we're trying to get you to where you're just going straight up like you are right now. And from there, we're also going to build upon that. So notice DeGrom goes right up, right? But as soon as he's getting up, he's also hinging into his hip right here, right? Which is causing him to inadvertently also go forward, right? And make forward progress to the mound. Notice, right? If we were to take a look at these side by side, right? And you were to ask which one has better built potential energy, you're going to go with DeGrom because of this hip hinge right here, right? So, from that hip hinge, right, then we get into our drive phase, rather what we're getting into with block position. Notice that DeGrom is working down in his delivery, right? He is taking all of his momentum towards the ground, right? Obviously, he's not putting it straight down, but more so he's taking it down the slope of the mound, right? So he's working down the slope of the mound while making forward progress, right? Now, notice for you, right, if we were to take a look at your bottom half here, right, take a look at DeGrom's bottom left, or rather his right leg, and take a look at your right leg. And notice, right, what we talked about, if I were to draw kind of a line right here and then DeGrom's line right here, you're going to notice that DeGrom is in a lot more of an athletic stance right now. Obviously, we're not going to automatically get in that stance in first day. There's just, there's no way, obviously, because we have so many things that we're working on at one time, especially when we first start. So, again, like I talked about earlier, don't look at this as, especially in this video, don't look at this as, I'm doing something wrong. It's not that. It's, you're going to see through this video where we're going to, or rather, where is our endpoint, right? So, with that being said, right, one thing I want to keep working on is this right leg, right, and getting into a better athletic position, right? So then we get into our block position, right? Now, notice what we talked about earlier, right? Notice DeGrom is perfectly in line with his body. Notice your head. Actually, that's not a great line. Notice the center of your head is not the center of your body, right? So what that tells me is two things. Number one, if we look at DeGrom, his center of mass, he is still having more efficiency than we are, right? And the reason is because think about when we talked about the chain, right? So we get to here, and then as soon as we lunge forward right here, well, guess what? That breaks up a little bit of the chain, right? And instead of being here and our torso being just straight like this, right? we're kind of in this little of like a bend right here, right? Versus if I was to take a look at DeGrom's torso, right? DeGrom's torso is kind of in this T position, right? So that's how I want you to think about, right? If I were to take a look at yours, it's kind of like in this cursive, actually, that's not a great line. Let me do that again. Kind of like in this cursive jagged T, right? So with that being said, that's another thing I want to keep working on next week is really getting from your load phase into block better, right? And that's something that we'll keep working on over time as well. One thing I do want to note that you do a great job of, right, is right here, right? I still think that we can honestly, if we get you a little bit more loose, especially, and this also comes with warming up as well, right? If we can get you, I really think we can get you honestly to like right here. I really do. Just because of your length and, your body. I really think we can get there. It's just right now, we're just still so firm and tight. Because notice how far DeGrom gets off the mound, right? So for starters, right, this is the mound right here, right? So notice if we were to go back, right, there is the rubber. And look at the forward progress that DeGrom makes versus notice how in this back foot, we're still very much connected versus if we were to take a look at DeGrom's, he has little connection still on this because he's driving forward, right? So that's what I want to keep working on, at least from load to block position, right? From there, then we get into the delivery. Now, take a look at DeGrom's front arm, right? His front side, and take a look at your front side, right? DeGrom's is more in an athletic position, right? So this is where we talked about getting to this point and getting into a tuck position, right? Notice your glove is all the way down here, right? Which, think about in terms of physics, right? If my glove is down here, my body is also going to go towards this way, right? Versus DeGrom's is in his chest. And if I were to clear it, if we have your glove in your armpit, right, we're better off going forward, right? We're better off making forward progress to home plate, right? Another thing too, right? We get to this point. One thing is I want you to take a look. When DeGrom gets into his throwing position right here, right? We get to there, and notice by the time DeGrom's lifted his foot, he's also let go of the baseball, right? And notice your back foot here, we haven't even released the baseball yet, and we're already lifting up, right? So, another thing to keep in mind too, right? When we talk about efficiency with our back foot, right, we want to keep connected as long as possible, right? Because think about it. If we've built up all this potential energy and then we lose an anchor point, right? So think about your 2 feet here as anchor points, right? And think about if I lose one anchor point. Well, there goes a lot of my power in my anchors, right? So now instead, I have to rely solely on all the potential energy that I built up in one anchor, right? Now, I will say, this position, I love. I love this position. If this foot was connected on the bottom, and then we have this glove going directly into your armpit next instead of falling down to the side, I truly love this position right here. I think, and honestly, I say this, I say this very seriously, Aidan. For someone who is just getting into pitching, this is a beautiful stance right here. Beautiful stance because, number one, we have layback, right? We have this layback right here, but also we're above our shoulder, right? So we're doing 2 things right here, right? We're creating layback, aka whip, which is going to create velocity, but also we are putting our elbow above our shoulder rather than pushing, which is what a lot of young pitchers do, especially pitchers also who are just starting. So I love that. I love that you're getting in this position already, right? Now, the reason, obviously, like we talked about in the lesson, that you're finishing over is take a look at where you're releasing the baseball. You're releasing the baseball right here, right? Which is causing you to sail this baseball up, right? Instead, if we release this baseball right here, right? Instead, if we release here, then we're going to be more on a downward trajectory, right? Now, one thing I want you to notice too, right? So I know I'm talking a lot of points in this video, but this is more so for you to be able to look back on whenever we do these lessons so that, you can kind of see the progress that you made and also in your off time work on some of these things. So additionally, right, we want to keep our chest going forward because we kind of stop ourselves right here. And instead, I want your chest to be over your front side, right? And we'll talk about that next lesson as well. But realistically, your chest, look at how DeGrom's is, right? DeGrom's is in this 45 degree, and we're more so kind of like in this, I would say, 60 degree. We want to be more so like right here with our body and our torso and our back, right? So I know a lot of things that I just talked about in this video, right? But again, the reason why I'm doing this video is so that you can kind of see where your mechanics are at now and where we're trying to get your mechanics for the future. So otherwise, a great job today. I know that, you kind of got down on yourself a little bit towards the end, just kind of because you didn't hit the target that you wanted to. But, one thing I do want you to realize, right, is we got closer and closer and closer to that target, right? And it's just going to get better over time, right? Especially when we get that first strike, that is going to be something that we celebrate, like we talked about. Those are the little things that we celebrate. And, from there, I just want you to keep going. And especially, to keep practicing, like we talked about with those dry mechanics. Keep working on those this week and look forward to working with you next week.